Next order of business is roll call members. Please indicate your presence when the machine is open. If all the members voted, Tyler, roll.
Well, it's been a little while, and you're probably wondering why that's the case. There's been a lot of news made, and you haven't heard from us. And the fact is, Earl and I tried. We tried to record an episode, and the day that we were recording the episode, the news broke that the Indiana Senate Republicans would not convene for a special session, and thus we believed, as the House, we would not join in any kind of redistricting battle. That actually changed. So as we would have thought to do another episode to update you, things were shifting sort of day to day. And we learned that we would be going in to hear maps, which then triggered that the Senate, despite not having the votes, from the very beginning said they didn't have the votes, also then decided to convene a week after we did in December, to come in and hear the maps that we were going to pass. And so we'll talk about kind of how this all unfolded. But for what it's worth, we've been trying to come back to you, trying to spend a little bit of time in your headphones and on your screens, and just couldn't get there. But before we get into it, Earl, Happy New Year. We're recording the Friday before session starts. This will come out the day session starts on January 5th. But how's the holidays been? How's the new year treating you? What's going on?
Well, Happy New Year to you also. So far, so good. You know, holidays for me, and I had this conversation with a cousin of mine right before Christmas. You know, at some point it stopped being gifts, and then it became, I love being able to spend time with family and friends. So did a lot of that over over Christmas Eve, Christmas, and New Year's Eve. So that was a lot of fun. I know we're all kind of in the shift mode because we're going back into session, as you said, on Monday. So kind of in that mode of switching from being, okay, the fun times are over, now it's time to get real. So that's what's been going on with me.
That makes sense. I have just been perpetually exhausted. It's been a blast. The kids, it's been a blast. Obviously been at the house a lot more. But my goodness, going back to work is the rest that I think I need, which is kind of crazy. So Earl, let's jump in. Redistricting has been a whirlwind.
It has been.
As I kind of mentioned in the opening, we thought we weren't going in, then we were going in, and then we did the maps and we voted. Kind of just talk through a little bit. Let's start just with getting in there and the kind of debate that happened on the floor in the House as it related to these deeply gerrymandered districts that would have eliminated any Democratic representation, any representation for minority communities at all. Talk through just kind of like how session looked for you in this kind of that first week.
You know, it was interesting, I'm sure, for everyone. And I have to say the maps were interesting themselves. When you look at, and this is one of the things I said on the floor, when you look at District 1, where I live in Northwest Indiana, it's been a Northwest Indiana district, but the new map would have had it going into Northeast Indiana. And I would really say probably into Central, or at least touching on the tip of going into Central. And then when you look at where you are in the Indianapolis and Marion County, having districts, multiple districts, they were in Indianapolis and went to the state line was interesting, and splitting Indianapolis up over 4 different districts. And even, you know, we learned about this, if it wasn't already enough out there, there were precincts that were split up amongst congressional districts. I'm not sure how that really made sense, but, you know, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of debate, a lot of bringing out and pointing out people. And I have to give credit. I think there was a lot of input by advocates, and those were advocates on the both sides of the aisle, shall we say, R's and D people that came up and said, this is not what we should be doing halfway through the decade. We do this every decade. So, you know, and I'll add the other thing for me, you know, there's so many things that we need to work on related to healthcare, childcare, the price of utilities, the price of food, so many things going on that we really need to put more effort into. And as been said, and I'm really hoping we'll actually, when we return starting on Monday, we'll actually put a lot of effort into those real Hoosier issues that people really want us to work on.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. And that's honestly what Democrats talked about the whole time.
Right.
Every single member of our caucus, I think, got up and talked about kitchen table issues, things that were affecting people's pocketbooks, healthcare, insurance costs,
Mm-hmm.
how much groceries are costing, the
Yeah.
fact that, childcare has been completely gutted in the state of Indiana and it's almost
Right.
unavailable now for low-income Hoosiers. So we kept going up and talking about that and talking about that and talking about how these maps were sort of an abomination, which they were. As you've mentioned, I think I would live in a congressional district that touches the Ohio River. Just kind of crazy how it was put together. We kept talking and talking and talking, one person after the other. I was really proud of our members. I mean, I think everybody just kind of stayed really on message and talked about
Mm-hmm.
things that matter. Interestingly, no Republicans talked. Only the author of the bill talked pretty much the entire debate on the floor through seconds, and then on thirds, same thing, that we did not hear from almost anyone other than the author the entirety of that week of session.
Yeah, that's correct. That was something that was very clear. I don't know, of course, how much conversation happened about no one else needs to talk about that in terms of the House. But it was very clear that that happened, and it was very clear that that was the only thing that was going to happen. So, yeah, and I agree with you. I think I want to give credit to our colleagues. I think people did a great job of getting up and talking about this and pointing out things that were issues. I mean, we know those maps came from, and I think that was finally admitted, they came from outside of the state of Indiana. They were not internal. And they didn't make sense. I mean, they split up, even I mentioned precincts, they really split up the minority community. I remember seeing, I think it's called a heat map of the minority community in Indianapolis, and the lines literally went right through the areas where minorities predominantly live. So there was a lot going on there that was not right. There was a lot going on there that really didn't have to do with us as Hoosiers, had to do with Washington, D.C. And I'm so glad that Hoosiers stepped up. And I'm glad to see it turned out.
The author said as much, right? I mean, we pressed, as can happen on third reading, we have an opportunity to question the author of a bill. And so we did. Our members questioned the author. And time again, he said the bill and the maps were about one thing and one thing only: partisan advantage, making sure Republicans win, that Republicans have control of the House, despite the fact that popularity is plummeting for National Republican Party, for National Republican policies. This was all about defeating Democrats and removing Democrats from the equation. And as I mentioned on the floor, it actually wasn't just about that. It was about removing moderate Republicans, independents, essentially anyone who's not a hardcore MAGA Trump Republican would be removed from the equation entirely under these maps. And so what happens? We go through second reading. Democrats offer quite a few amendments that are about people and not politics. We go through third reading. We all go up and share our piece and press the author and question him. He sticks to the line that it's just about partisan advantage, that he does not care and was not interested in what happened to minority communities as a relate for these maps. And then it comes down to a vote, and the maps pass with 57 total votes. Were you surprised, actually, that was as narrow as it was?
I'm going to answer that question, but I want to go back and point out something. Because I actually spoke when it went through committee. There was a gentleman, I don't remember his name, who got up and said, I am a Republican. I think he said he's always been a Republican. And he said, I would love for Indiana to be a 9-0 state, but not this way, which I thought was key. And I know, having some other conversations with, some Republicans I know up here, and I remember one of them made the comment and said, hey, here's a crazy idea. Why don't we, as Republicans, he was speaking, get better candidates to run in those two districts, and let's see what happens. So, that was a big part of it as well. I had, and I'm sure you had, as well as others of us Democrats, had conversations with some of our friends on the Republican side that were not for this. So I knew that there was going to be a pretty decent amount of House Republicans that were not going to vote for this. So no, I was not shocked by that. Of course, we're all on the Democrat side hoping that number would be bigger, but it was what it was. And I think we, can look back and say, hey, there's a lot of people that show they weren't for this and they stood by their vote and they hit the no button.
What's telling to me, or maybe it's not telling, what's compelling to me is that, the speaker voted for the bill, which not surprising. He had come out and said he was in favor of the move, but his leadership team did not vote for the bill.
Great point.
So caucus chair didn't vote for it. Majority leader didn't vote for it. Several chairpersons didn't vote for it. That, which has not been written about, has not been talked about in the press at all, is an enormous departure from how things typically work. Karikoff also, who's Speaker Pro Tem, didn't vote for it, but he was on the dais, so we actually don't know how he would have voted. I'm shocked that not more people have talked about this, because that departure in terms of leadership of the caucus is a weird thing to see happen in the House side.
Yeah, I noticed that also. I think in order to kind of answer your question, I think basically what a lot of people have hit is, okay, we're moving past this. We're going to come back on the 5th of January and we're going to face real issues. So I think that's basically what happened and why there's not a lot of conversation going on about it, because it was something that most of us didn't really want to do. We did it for whatever the reason or reasons are. We did it. And now it's time to move on and get into some real serious Hoosier type issues. That's what I'm confident from conversations I've had is why we don't really hear about that. Yeah.
So we finish that Friday with a vote, 57 in favor of the maps. Therefore, they move to the Senate. The Senate starts their process then the following Monday, and that's where things start to get even more interesting. They move to the committee process, second reading, third reading happens. And when did you know, as we're watching this debate unfold, because I'd heard some rumors that the votes weren't still there, though, everything in the building can get kind of opaque that close to a vote. When did you know for a fact these maps weren't going to pass the Senate?
Well, I had, from having conversations, and I'm going to, because it ain't over till it's over. So I'm going to say, really, even before the Senate walked in, as we knew, and we had been told the votes weren't there, I think everyone, you still hold your breath until the vote happens and you see the red and the green lights pop up on the board. So I think walking into it, we were confident about that. And I felt good about it, but you still are a little nervous until the game's over. So that's where I was with it.
Long debate. Lots of members on both sides in their situation spoke for and against the bill. Kind of a famous moment of Senator Garton banging on the podium, nearly breaking it in two. And we won't even talk about his tweet AI image of him beating up Santa. There's not enough time. There's just not enough time to get into this. But lots of interesting debate on their side. Lots of folks that are obviously worried about their electoral outcomes, getting really fired up and whatnot on the red meat. So they come to a vote, 31 vote against the bill. So I think the total was 31-19. And the issue comes to a conclusion. Tell me, Earl, what you were feeling and thinking. And I think I know what you're going to say, which is finally we can get back to doing what Hoosiers actually care about. But kind of give me, this would have dramatically affected our two worlds, right? Northwest Indiana, Indianapolis. Kind of what was going through your mind when the board lit up the way it did. And it was by a margin larger than any of us expected. I think we can all say we did not expect 31 votes.
So I was sitting where I am now in my office at home. I was working on some things on one monitor, and on the other monitor I had up the Senate Senate debate, Senate session. And when it came down to the end of the debate and they were hitting the buttons, I stopped doing what I was doing over here, shifted to here, watched with anticipation and hope that things would hold the way they did. And when they did hold the way they did, I was happy. My phone started blowing up because people were texting, yay, or the votes, or here's the vote, in case people weren't able to watch live. So it was a happy moment. And I'm glad things held the way they did. And I'm glad people, held to the fact that we should do this every decade, not split it up when someone that's not even here in the state wants this to happen.
Yeah, common sense prevailed, to say the least. And I was at the State House, so I was watching with some of the staff for quite a while. And then went and got my kids and was in the car listening. And man, yeah, I was relieved to. What's interesting in the days after is I got calls from people I've met over the years who are in legislatures across the country, because obviously this was national news that a state actually stood up to Donald Trump, and they were like, "What happened? How did you guys pull this off?" And
Yeah.
I think the only thing I could say really is like the threats and intimidation hurt the effort to draw these maps. I think those, this is Indiana. People don't like getting pushed around. The threats of cutting federal funding, I think that backfired on the Trump administration.
Yeah.
It's just not a Hoosier kind of, that's not a Hoosier mentality to like let someone bully you into something. So I think that backfired. And also I think that we just had enough members on the Senate side in particular who believe that democracy shouldn't work this way. And I think, we're partisan folks by some nature, right? We believe that we've got the better ideas and answers than the other side, but we got to give credit where credit is deserved. And those Senate Republicans showed courageous leadership in this instance. I think that's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, they did. And I agree with you. I think the intimidation, not so much. I know people that are reps in Texas, that are people in Texas. So I was in contact with them. I was actually interviewed on a radio station in Atlanta. So you're right. This was we saw it on national news, and then people in other states wanted to have contact and reach out about this. Yeah, that was one of the things I said is we had senators, Republican senators that were threatened that said, no, I'm sorry, or not sorry, really. I'm not going to give in to your threat. And so they really showed bravery, and I appreciate that. And I'm glad that it turned out the way it turned out. Now, of course, the question people have been asking is it really over? Or when you come back in January, is this going to be back on the plate? As far as I know, it's not. Again, until sine die, it ain't over till it's over. And it doesn't mean that someone won't try something, but I think we're in a great place now.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so let's move on. We got just a little bit of time left here, and we won't spend too much time on this, but once it affects your area, I think you should give folks an understanding of what's going on. My understanding is that because of you, the Chicago Bears will be the Gary or East Chicago Bears sometime soon. So could you just explain the issue to us?
I greatly appreciate you giving me 100% credit. So I'll give a little bit of background. This was actually something that was worked on some 20 plus years ago. My father, when he was in this seat, and a bunch of other leaders in the area, worked on getting the Bears to come over. They were looking at a new home back then. Things didn't work out. They ended up staying where they are. My father had authored a bill that had to do with creating a Northwest Indiana Sports Development Commission, which goal is to bring professional sports to Northwest Indiana. So in 2025, I resurrected the bill my father authored, creating the Northwest Indiana Sports Development Commission. It passed, which I'm happy about. So the commission has started meeting and putting together a future and developing a plan for professional sports. And then all of a sudden, Kevin Warren, president and CEO, I believe those are his titles, for the Chicago Bears, put out a statement saying we are looking at all options, including Northwest Indiana. And all of a sudden, the floodgates just kind of opened up. It's been entertaining because different people, the posts that have been on social media have been hilarious. People are mocking up stadiums. They're mocking up stadium in front of or surrounded by steel mills because, we're known for that here in Northwest Indiana. They've mocked them up on the water where they've created apparently new ground that they can sit on. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been interviewed by Chicago and Indiana media. I have to say that actually happened in 25 when the bill was going through. So it was a lot of interviews that I did back then. But, from what we know, the Bears are looking at all options. They purchased land in Arlington, and apparently they're not getting what they want in terms of state support. And so if you're them, why not look? I mean, we have the New York Jets and the New York Giants actually play in New Jersey. You now have the Kansas City Chiefs are moving. So not everyone plays where they are named after. It has been fun with the names of, are they going to be the East Chicago Bears, the Gary Bears, the Hammond Bears? Representative Hatcher and I have had a playful feud about East Chicago Bears or Gary Bears. And I've told her, East Chicago, all you have to do is add the word in East and you're good. So, but the reality is they would be the Chicago Bears. There's no way, if this works out and they come over to Northwest Indiana, there's no way you want to mess with a legacy name like that. Part of also that has been some of the other things engaged in this conversation is when you look at the economics of Indiana, it really is a no-brainer for them to come here. I mean, no promises. Obviously, nothing has been locked in at this point, but you just look at tax differences and whatever incentives we can work on makes it a great place here. The fan base is already here in Northwest Indiana because we watch Chicago media. So, people here and are used to walking around with Chicago sports teams jerseys and watching Chicago games play. Easy access. So if you live in Illinois, you live in Chicago, you want to come over, 8094 is a quick trip in, or jump on the South Shore. We put all that money into double tracking and making the trains better. So there's options there. There's an airport in Gary, so teams can fly in or people can fly in to watch the games. There's land here in Northwest Indiana. So it would be a great play for the Bears to come here. So we're hoping and working, and there's some things I know I'm working on. There's some things other people I know of are working on, but we're putting in the effort to get them here. It'll be a great win for Northwest Indiana and really a great win for the entire state of Indiana.
You've sold me. I'm so in. I am so in. I love the South Shore line too. That was a good plug there as well. You've got a future in this business of communicating how wonderful your community is. Keep that up.
I'm a little better than mediocre, so I'm okay.
That's all we ask for. That's all we ask for on this subpar podcast we do together. That's all we're looking for. Okay, let's just wrap this thing up with the easiest thing to talk about, which is just that as I said, this is being released on the day session starts. I'll be clean shaven at the time. What should people expect? Because the reality here is that we had a not special session, which was obviously going in early in December.
And it wasn't really a special session. It was the beginning of the 26th session.
Started the regular session.
Yeah.
So what that has been, the ripple effect is we spent all that time on redistricting, and now we have only not even 60 days to get into the real meat of the 2026 legislative session. So what should people expect as they look to January and February and the Indiana General Assembly?
So one of the things when we were talking about going in early for 2026 in December, one of the things I said is my fear is it's going to blow up the regular 2026 session because we were going to lose time. It's already the short session, and that's exactly what's happening. The short session is becoming shorter. So we go in on Monday and we will be done. We're targeting February 27th, which if you look at that, that's less than 2 months of regular session to get through a lot of major issues. We were told even during the debate over redistricting that when we come back, we'll work on childcare, healthcare, food costs, utility costs, insurance. There's not a lot of time to do that. And as we're all getting our schedules and we're, having conversations about how many committee meetings are going to take place, that number is going to be small. So I know I've had some conversations about some bills like childcare. I was on a panel where Representative Heine talked about a childcare bill coming out of the House side. So there's some things being worked on, obviously, by us as Democrats. My fear is we won't have enough time to get them done, that there'll be a small amount of bills that will get done. So I hope I'm wrong, but it's going to be a mad dash. We're all going to hit the ground. We're going to ski it, and we're going to run as fast as we can to get as much done as we can.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, there's been a lot of conversation about, SB1, the property tax reform bill, and how a mess that has become already. Will we get a fix done? There's been some dramatic shifts and changes at the federal level, and because of the big, beautiful bill, like we were supposed to address some fixes there. That hasn't happened. There's a lot to tackle, not to mention all the things that are impacting the day-to-day lives of Hoosiers. So we'll see. We'll see. This will, we're giving you a preview, but I think come the end of this week when we probably issue another episode here, we'll have more to talk about, kind of where things are headed and what the agenda looks like. But it's going to be interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned Senate Bill 1 because I should have mentioned that. We also have, and I keep butchering the name of it, the business personal property tax. That also has caused a lot of stress. Chairman Thompson over Ways and Means was up here this summer for a meeting in our Lake County Assessor's Office, Latanya Spearman, and it was Republicans and Democrats with the state house and also local. And he said, we're going to do some work on that too, because that's causing a lot of stress for local municipalities as well. So long list of things. We'll see how they all play out.
Well, we'll keep you posted. We'll keep publishing. I think now that we're going to be back in the session, I think Earl and I will get back on a cadence of weekly, putting something out for you, bringing in some of our friends to talk with us, and yeah, and please, reach out to us, comment, and post with us, and all of that. We're excited to be back. We're going to try to sleep this weekend and then get ready to rock and roll for the mad dash sprint of a session come next week. Earl, any final thoughts for the folks who are still listening after all these episodes we've published?
I'm going to bring up advocacy. We saw a lot of great advocacy when it came to redistricting, and I'm having this conversation in different meetings leading up to us returning, is those issues you and I have talked about today. Continue to be advocates for things that we know we need to get done or things that we need to correct. So I'm happy to see so much involvement by people, and I encourage you. I thank you for that, first of all. And second, I encourage you not to give up doing that on other issues that are important to all of us. And you know what? I'm going to add one more thing.
Yeah.
I get to see you face to face.
I know. We've been so virtual.
I know. Three-dimensional world.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. We will talk to you again in just a few short days. We hope you tune in at iga.in.gov for all the excitement. And yeah, Earl, I'll see you in just a couple days, buddy.
See you. Have a good one.